Sekeres Price for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. Extend your game night with a staycation downtown Vancouver. Book a Sekeres Price exclusive rate here at the Wall Center, 604-331-1000. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things with Sean Chessman. We got a big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Infinity in Richmond has the 2024 QX60s with leasing at just 0.99% right now for 24 months, and that's on all trims. Treat yourself to a QX60 right now at the Richmond Auto Mall. It's Applewood Infinity Richmond. It's all good at Applewood.
A couple of poll questions running at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. Will Elias Pettersson step up in this series? Yes or no? You can vote. And then we had to recast because of the big news. Can the Canucks win the series without Thatcher Demko? And that is our top story. Thatcher Demko, Canucks starting goaltender, out for game 2 and questionable for the remainder of this first-round playoff series against the Nashville Predators. Frank Seravalli, NHL insider, broke the news, and he joined us a few minutes ago in studio to say more. And we're joined now inside the Nation Network studio by Frank Seravalli of the Daily Faceoff and the Frankly Speaking podcast, who had the news.
Sobering news.
Quite a bombshell.
Yeah, Thatcher Demko out for game 2 for the Vancouver Canucks. And you could tell my spidey senses were tingling the last couple days. Not available to the media post game 1, game day between games, doesn't practice. Not out there for morning skate, day of game 2. You're thinking that's quite odd, having covered enough playoff series. There's all sorts of gamesmanship at this time of year. Of course, the Canucks don't want to tip their hand, but I can say with absolute certainty that Thatcher Demko is out for game 2, and his status for this series is very much in question.
Do we know it's a re-aggravation of the knee injury? Do we know when and if it happened on that big stretching save early in game 1 on Beauvillier?
No, I don't think it happened on the Beauvillier save. And I don't have any concrete details, but the earliest sense that I got was that this was something totally unrelated.
This is with only the 2 games run up in the regular season, these were some of the risks, of course. If it was a 10-game run up, maybe this little re-aggravation happens a lot earlier.
It's not a re-aggravate. I don't think it's related at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
that a new part injury.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the toughest part is, look, details at this time of year are scarce. They're kept under lock and key. But as best as I can tell, I don't think it's related.
In some ways, is that good news, Frank? I mean, it could be, if it's just a tweak of something else, is I don't know. To me, that I can spin that into almost good news, in that it's because if it's a knee injury previously, which is what he's talked about, knees are pretty critical, obviously. And now we don't have news that it's not a critical part of the body, like a hip or anything anyway. But maybe it's something.
I understand why you'd want to try and find some spin.
Yeah.
The bottom line is this: the Vancouver Canucks are without their game-changing goalie, and potentially for this entire round.
How do you
That's
think?
hard to spin that any other way.
No, it's true.
How do you think Casey DeSmith will do?
Look, I think the Canucks have had a lot of trust in DeSmith all year. I think he's really fit in nicely with the team. He was obviously asked to do a lot of heavy lifting for a pretty significant stretch of the season. I think he performed well enough. Did he light the world on fire? Absolutely not. But did he fill the role and void admirably at the time? Yes. And I think, given where the Canucks were at the time, the fact that they still ended up winning the division with Thatcher Demko missing as much time as he did probably is a pretty good indication of what they have in front of them with DeSmith. He's someone that is certainly capable.
Big win versus Edmonton late would add some confidence in DeSmith. Obviously, what kind of confidence does this give the Nashville Predators when they take to the ice? They know they're not staring at Demko. Do you think that gives them wind underneath their wings at all?
I think that's maybe the toughest part for the Canucks and Canucks fans, is that you think to that save that he made on Beauvillier and how honestly, the entire complexion of game one could be different. It's early in the game, significant opportunity on the 2-on-1 for Nashville, electric building. They have the ability to quiet it and begin to plant seeds of doubt in the Canucks' minds. And Demko extinguished that with one swift leg kick. And that was really significant. Now, the next part is, hey, can you find some way to elevate your game knowing that your starter's out? For Nashville, look, what I would say is they'd probably have to worry about themselves. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but it's UC Saros is the one who gave up the muffin from just inside the blue line that I think, clean that up, and game one might also have been different.
So definitely out for game two, questionable for the series. Do you think he's going to travel to Nashville? Is there any hope that he plays in Nashville?
I'd say at least for games 3 and 4, probably pretty unlikely that he goes to Nashville.
Stay back and rehabilitate.
Yeah. And
everything from here on is just about as much as you can get, as much as you can do to get back.
Yeah. And the 2-day breaks in this series might do him well.
2 extra days of rest.
After
we'll see.
Two,
I mean, it's there's no doubt the Canucks are in a tough spot right now.
Yeah. Have you heard of Canuck luck? Are you familiar when we talk about Canuck luck?
I'm not.
Okay,
I did see the replies to my tweets.
It's Murphy's Law-esque, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And after a season of going through relatively unscathed, we had talked about this in the final week of the regular season, that all of their best players, their top 6 scores, 7 scores, did not miss games due to injury at all this season. It was an incredibly healthy season for the Vancouver Canucks. Canuck luck strikes here in the playoffs with Thatcher Demko.
But heroes are born out of these sorts of circumstances, right?
Hey, and I think it really helps. Not close to the same thing as Ullmark and Swayman in terms of ability or in terms of friendship or anything like that. But Demko and DeSmith really kind of became close this season.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something to, DeSmith coming in and lifting this team up. I think you're grasping at this point, but
that's all we got.
Yeah, I mean, what else? What's the alternative? This is why that's what the tweets are all saying. This is why the Canucks can't have nice things.
Yeah, great reporting, Frank. Welcome to Vancouver.
Yes,
wish we met under better circumstances here in the Nation Network studio. But thanks for this, and we'll catch up later in the week. That was Frank Seravalli from moments ago. And just to recap, Blake, this is a new injury. It is not related to the knee injury that he suffered in March and kept him out, that game against the Winnipeg Jets, and kept him out for the better part of a month. This is not related to the split save, the incredible stop that he made on former Canuck Anthony Beauvillier in the opening minutes of game one, and it is not related to the emergency recall. We did not ask that to Frank on tape there, but talk to him after. They recalled Artur Silovs before the series as the emergency third goaltender so that they have a third goalie on site in case something happened. Apparently not related to that either, that was something that they chose to do despite the effect to the Abbotsford Canucks, who were down the stretch and hoping to get home ice advantage in the AHL playoffs. Didn't come to pass. Nikita Tolopilo is going to
he's now the man. Well, Zach Sawchenko's seen some action too.
And now Artur Silovs is thrust into the role of backup goaltender for at least game 2.
And in that, Casey DeSmith had a really nice season for the Vancouver Canucks. Mm-hmm. The leash on Casey DeSmith is not a long one, though. I really don't think. 2 to 3 early goals in a hockey game. Silovs is coming in.
You ain't got time to bleed.
No.
Now, here's the good news. Casey DeSmith in his career against the Nashville Predators is 2-1 with a .920 save percentage and a .231 goals against average. Those are exceptional numbers. He started and won the final game between these two teams in the regular season on December 19th. It was a 5-2 victory. The Vancouver Canucks. DeSmith made 26 saves and was named the first star of that hockey game.
In Nashville.
In Nashville.
It should be noted.
In Nashville.
Yeah, in Nashville.
So has experienced just this year, albeit before Nashville went on their huge point streak. of playing and beating the Preds, including in their building, although I can't imagine that Bridgestone Arena will be at the same tenor on Friday as it was for a ho-hum game in December.
He's 2-1, and the only game that he lost, he only let in 3 goals. So in the 3 games, he's never allowed more than the 3 goals. Twice, just 2. Yeah. So, the team has changed. 2 of those starts come in 2022, early 2022. So it's 2 years removed. Needless to say, the Predators have had some changes since then. But, a lot of it is psychological, the seeing a crest and knowing that you've done fairly well against them. And that will serve Casey DeSmith somewhat well. Matt, the start versus the Oilers, I referenced it there with Frank. I mean, we wondered about that start and wondered, would Demko come back into the lineup for that start versus the Edmonton Oilers? In the end, he did not. He waited one more game. Boy, does that game look big now versus the Edmonton Oilers, because Casey DeSmith had not been playing well prior to that, and it gave Casey DeSmith a big win as his last memory in the starter's crease for the Vancouver Canucks. And imagine right now if Demko had come back in for that game and we had all the questions surrounding DeSmith and Shelovs that we had that penultimate week of the season when people were wondering, well, who's really the better guy to start right now with Demko out? Is it Shelovs or DeSmith? Think about where we'd all be at, wondering if DeSmith hadn't got that big win versus, granted, a McDavid-less Oilers team, but still a very good Oilers team on that last Saturday of the season. So to me, that's a bit of good fate for the Canucks and Casey DeSmith.
Yes. We talked to Frank about 2 days off between games 2 and games 3. Of course, Friday is game 3 in Nashville. There is also 2 games off between game 5 and game 6.
Yeah.
Did you just mention that?
Nope, I did not. No.
Yeah.
So that, you're talking game 6 is a week and a bit away.
Right. So if you're not familiar with the playoff schedule, game 5 is back here a week from today, Tuesday, April 30th. And then game 6 is Friday, May 3rd in Nashville. Of course, assuming those games are necessary, there is the possibility still of a Canucks sweep.
Sure.
Unlikely as that might be. But you anticipate you're going to play a game 5, so that's back here a week Tuesday. And then if you needed more time, then game 6, game 7 is Sunday,
You could get 9 days off here.
Right.
Yeah.
We also, the other thing we don't know start times yet for games 5, 6, and 7, unless I'm mistaken here. And there's been an update on that file. We do not have puck drop times for those hockey games. Okay. Rick Tocchet, Vancouver Canucks head coach, took to the podium moments after the news broke about Thatcher Demko. Here's what coach had to say.
Well, he skated yesterday. He's not going to play tonight. We're going to evaluate him today on something. It wasn't the old injury, and that's all I really got for you guys. Day-to-day thing.
Can you give us a sense of when it may have happened?
Yesterday, I think. I'm not quite sure. That's what I don't have a timeline exactly, so I don't want to speculate.
You said it happened. It may have happened yesterday in practice.
No, it might have been in the game, but I'm not quite sure because he skated yesterday. I don't have the exact timeline. That's why I don't want to speculate whether it's this time or whatever.
How equipped is this team to deal with it, given they've just dealt with it?
Well, I think all year we've had people step up in and out of the lineups. Casey played a big game against Edmonton. What was it? 10 days ago. A huge game to win the division. So he's done it all year for us. So. Just moving March forward. You guys are excited about tonight's game?
Well,
he says he skated yesterday. He didn't really.
He didn't skate with the group.
You're right. So he might have gone solo to test whatever it is that was hurting him. That's the only.
Yeah.
That's the only.
And the other thing is here,
there.
of course, it's the Stanley Cup playoffs. They want the other side to be thinking, plotting, accounting for different possibilities. But it does not inspire a lot of confidence when at the end of that first answer, he characterizes the injury as day to day, but his voice is trailing off.
He couldn't sell it.
Yeah, it didn't sound like he could sell the sizzle on day to day. And of course, Seravalli reporting questionable for the series. So there you have it. A huge, huge hurdle now placed in front of the Vancouver Canucks. So many will say, Blake, this market, this team, this franchise, forever tortured, Canuck luck, impending doom, can't have nice things. Here's JT Miller with some optimism about winning this series minus their starting goalie.
Yeah, it sucks. He works harder than anybody on a day-to-day basis when he's not injured, let alone when he's trying to get back in for stuff like this. So you feel for the guy. He's a big part of our team, but we got to find a way to, be resilient as a group and move forward. These things, we're not the only teams going through this type of stuff, so it's going to happen, and we need to find a way to be resilient, like I said.
And that's the attitude required going forward here. Defeatism is your enemy now. There's no time for woe or grievance or any of that on the part of the players. And in fact, as we talked about for the better part of a month when Demko was out and Casey DeSmith and Archer Silovs were the two goaltenders, the group has to be attuned to the fact that you don't have an all-world goalie back there anymore, and that well, in fact, produce even stingier defensive hockey from the Vancouver Canucks, because we know that when you don't have your horse there to save the day at the back, it tends to be a more conservative brand of hockey that you see. The guys recognize that and they adapt accordingly.
Matt, truthfully, there's adversity in the playoffs. Like there just is. The Golden Knights used 5 different goaltenders throughout the course of the regular season last year. There's
and several in the playoffs,
as well. And there, it's rarely a straight line. Think about even the 2011 run, losing as many players as they did in the Stanley Cup final. The Vancouver Canucks losing Sammy Salo at times after blocking the shot with the groin.
You're talking about the general and the battalion.
Yeah. The battalion was down for a bit.
Yep, sure was.
And there's others too. I mean, Kesler wasn't quite right after the Preds series. So you always have to battle something, and it's rearing its head here in game number 2, and that's tough to take, granted, if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. But there was going to be something, folks. There was always going to be something here. It's not smooth sailing.
And the other thing that we should highlight, and we highlighted this with Kevin Woodley when we had him on the program last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. More often than not now, it takes you 2 goalies to get through the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
The backup goalie has gone from being an afterthought when NHL general managers construct their hockey clubs to being an important position. And thank God that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin had the foresight to say at the outset of this season, we liked what we saw from Silovs, but that's not good enough. We need an established NHL netminder to come in here and play behind Thatcher Demko. Jeff always says, right, you need however many victories, 10 or so victories from your backup goaltender during the course of the season if you're going to be a playoff team. And, of course, to help your starting goaltender get the requisite rest during the regular season so that he is fresh for the Stanley Cup playoffs. We have seen in the past that great goaltenders just fade away in the Stanley Cup playoffs because they've been overworked, overtaxed in the regular season.
Teams were going into this.
Ottinger comes to mind. UC Saros may well come to mind here in this series.
Boston's probably going to use 2 goalies. There's some teams going into
Boston
this playoffs.
Use good. Yeah,
they were saying we're going to continue to use 2 goalies, and we talked about Vegas.
It was an odd call from Boston, but hey, that's how it works. That's what you're going. That's how they won all season. So you can understand why they were looking to.
I'm just looking at last year's stats. Carolina, Vegas, both using 2 prominent, two goalies to a large extent.
Yep.
Throughout the playoffs last season.
played 8 games in the playoffs.
He was 5-2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And keeps them going in the middle of the playoff run. So,
but all that by the same token, this is a major blow to the Vancouver Canucks, and it is going to be exceedingly difficult now to make the run that many had hoped. Look, it's going to be hard enough to win this series against Nashville, let alone to go forward. That all said, you hope that you can get the job done here with Casey DeSmith and that you buy enough rest for Thatcher Demko to return in the second round. Outside chance that he plays later in this series, but it does not sound good with a new injury here.
And Matt, our original poll question of the day becomes all the bigger now.
Fair.
We started the day without the Demko news, asking, do you think that Elias Pettersson can be a force, can make an imprint on this series?
You may have to win with more offense now.
I see people in the mention saying hit the over on this one because maybe it loosens up a bit.
I mean, it's very possible, I would think probably likely, that you will see a group that airs on the defensive side of the puck tonight with the Vancouver Canucks, making sure they're below the puck, making sure that they're in good defensive position and are not going to risk or cheat for any kind of offense. But fact of the matter is, if Nashville gets to DeSmith, then all of a sudden you've got to score some goals. And you're absolutely right about Elias Pettersson, Blake. Tocchet saying yesterday that it's his job to get him going. So once again, sheltering Petey a little bit here, saying, hey, it's coach's job, put it on my shoulders. Completely get that. You want to deflect any of that pressure, criticism from Pettersson in a Stanley Cup final, in a Stanley Cup playoff round. I get that. He also talked about how that line was not connected in game one. Nils Höglander was playing his very first Stanley Cup playoff game, and it showed. He was not much of a factor there. Sam Lafferty made the big defensive mistake on the second Predators goal. And look, Ilya Mikheyev had a little bit of jump when he was moved up to that line. So I suspect you'll see Mikheyev on that line with Pettersson and with Höglander. You'd like to think that Höglander's a little more settled in his second Stanley Cup playoff game as opposed to what he experienced here. And many of the players talked about being, emotionally moved by the reception of the crowd. And you can understand if all of that was just a little too much to handle for a young winger like Höglander. But the bottom line, as much as Tocchet wants to, shoulder some of the burden here, it's on Petey. He hasn't been very good for the better part of a month now. So
we do have some more news here, Matt. This is from Farhan Walji, friend of the show, frequently on Rink Wide Vancouver. And it's a little nuance here. He's being told it's an injury to the same knee, but not the same injury. Had an MRI yesterday on it. So he acknowledges it may not be a reoccurrence of the same injury per se, but is it so unlucky that it is to the exact same knee? Not a great time.
It's a discussion for another day, but at this stage of the game, you have to look at Thatcher Demko and consider him a injury-plagued player, right? A player that breaks down more often than you would like physically.
Been worried about his hips for a long time, but now it's the knees.
The fact of the matter is that he misses more time than anybody would like for a starting goaltender via injury.
And with regards to that knee, often, anybody who's been through big injuries like that knows the minute you have one injury, the rest of the body tries to compensate, and you wonder if another ligament in the knee was overcompensating because of the prior injury, and there's your possible problem. So,
and to me, that affects, again, we'll save most of this for another show, but I do think that has to affect how you address backup goaltender going forward this summer. Casey DeSmith is an unrestricted free agent. So whether it's Casey DeSmith or whether it's another certified, established National Hockey League goaltender, I do think you have to look at it. Be honest with yourself, be honest with Thatcher Demko and his body and how often it is broken down as a starting goaltender, and secure that position, much like you did this past year with Casey DeSmith.
Well, I was going to say, I think Casey DeSmith was a good backup goaltender.
He was a very good.
And I think ultimately, to address the poll question more head on, if we haven't already, they can win this series.
Absolutely, they can win this series.
Like,
they're the better hockey club.
Yeah,
they're better skater 1 through 18 than the Nashville Predators. We talked about it on Monday's show. We talked about it in the aftermath of Game 1. Nashville's an unspectacular hockey club. They have a fantastic first line that worries you with Forsberg and O'Reilly and a resurgent Gustav Nyquist. They have an exceptional first defense pair with Roman Josi, who's a perennial Norris guy, and Ryan McDonough, who's an uber veteran who knows how to win in the playoffs and has pretty high aptitude as well. When you get beyond their first 5 skaters, Nashville, decent, some good players there, some up-and-coming young players there, some guys who are identity players like Lazan and the way he hits. Mark Crawford talking about Carrier, the defenseman, the right shot. And some other guys sprinkled through that line. Novak and Evangelista have bright futures, I think. But I don't think you're looking at a group 6 through 18 skater-wise that scares you. An unspectacular team that gets into the playoffs via a wild card, which is appropriate because they're not the level of Winnipeg, Colorado, or Dallas in their division, and a team that you should still be able to handle so long as Casey DeSmith gives you competent goaltending.
Well, Matt, the way that they went on the 18-game unbeaten streak, or point streak, if you will, with 16 wins along the way, was scoring chances, generating scoring chances, and scoring their way to wins. We saw the Vancouver Canucks with Casey DeSmith in tow, as Thatcher Demko couldn't finish the season, lock things down. Keep most teams to under 25 shots on the season and keep them to the outside when they were getting shots. If they channel that again, Matt, you're giving them kryptonite, giving the Predators kryptonite. I mean, that's not how they win hockey games, by getting 20 shots and finding a way to victory. That's how the LA Kings can win a hockey game, but that's not how the Predators win hockey games.
Yep.
So you're forcing them out of their comfort zone if you're not letting them get scoring chances. So I think what we might see, and I know people are saying, oh, let's hit the over on this. Sure, a risk of that. But I think more likely they just go back to what they were doing 2.5 weeks ago, which was locking things down, kicking teams to the outside, frustrating teams, and then counterattacking and scoring on their own opportunities.
And quite frankly, Blake, and again, with respect, but they locked down much better teams than this Nashville outfit.
Right.
Much better.
Yes.
Teams. Much scarier teams.
Yes. Yeah.
Than this Nashville outfit. Now, flip side, because there's always a flip side. We talked about DeSmith, good work this year, good work in his career against Nashville. David on Twitter, counterpoint, DeSmith 1-2 in his last 3 games, 4.33 goals against and .859 save percentage. He got ventilated in that Minnesota matinee, you may remember, 10-7, which just destroyed his peripheral numbers. He worked so hard and did such good work, as did the team in front of him with the defensive play, to get the numbers back into a good space, Blake. And then, as we talked about, in Archer Silovs stole some starts from him. There were a couple struggles down the stretch.
But the last game, as I talked about earlier, the Oiler game, 970 save percentage.
Oiler game was great.
And
you've got that taste in your mouth, because the starts previous were
but go to the last 4 starts. If you go back one more game, so that was strategically chosen, that submitter, to say the last 3. If you go to the last 4 starts, well, that was a game against Dallas in which he loses, but he allows just 2 goals on 33 shots against the Western Conference regular season winners, and has a 939 save percentage.
And that's a scary offensive team.
Right. So 2 of his last 4 starts were great.
In fact, against
2 of them bad.
2 of maybe the 2 most scary offensive teams in the league in Edmonton.
Look at the
conference.
Just look at those last 4 starts, period, for him. Edmonton, LA, Vegas, Dallas, and even back one more to LA again. His last 5 starts were all against playoff teams. And
that's the murderer's row of the Western Conference. And that's the best of the lot.
3 of those games are decent starts, or 2 of them are great. The other LA game was just decent, 3 goals and 19 shots, and 2 bad ones. So he really gave you a mixed bag down the stretch. If he can channel those good starts, the Canucks are going to be okay the rest of the way. Hey, maybe this series went from, I picked it as a 5-game series. Maybe it just got to a 6 or 7-game series, but there's still no doubt in my mind the Canucks, if they play their game, can win this series.
I picked it in 7.
That's looking like a better bet.
I
now.
believe my line was nothing ever comes easy.
It's treated. I don't know if you had this in your mind when you said
No,
that,
but honestly, Blake, covering the Leafs, covering the Canucks for the years that I've covered, you just sort of come to expect these things that, for lack of a better expression, shit happens. You don't have 54-year playoff droughts or cup droughts without this kind of thing, or never win a cup in 54. You don't have 61-year cup drought without these sorts of things waylaying the club at one point or another. Now, Rick Tocchet was talked about. Look, we talked about areas of improvement for the Vancouver Canucks on Monday's program. We talked about Elias Pettersson doing better, of course. We talked about more shots actually getting to the goal, because it was 22 shots for the Canucks in the first game, whatever it was. But it was a low total, and it was a low total from the jump too. I mean, they just weren't getting a lot of pucks on net, even though they had zone time, even though they had scoring chances, even though they had possession and all of that. And discipline. Making sure that you won't let the Predators get you off the game, whether it's with, falling down easy, soft penalty calls. We saw a little bit of that in game one. Rick Tocchet talked about areas of improvement. He was asked Monday, forecheck and edge battles off draws. Now, the edge battles, I think, refer to Lafferty losing his man on the goal after he had to move over and take the face off. Boy, Rick saying forecheck. I thought the forecheck was pretty darn good in game one. Now, this is a head coach that lives and dies on forecheck. They are a chip and chase team. That is what he practices. That is one of his principles, his non-negotiables. So I guess he believes they can get to a higher level, and I think they can. And here's the other thing, Blake. If that forecheck game is going, and even if it's not creating puck possession and creating, turnovers and goals, much like we saw with the Dakota Joshua winner, just have them spend time in their own end tonight and every night going forward until Demko's back, right? That's part of your defensive posture, defensive strategy in terms of winning this series now with Casey DeSmith.
I think what he saw in the forecheck was we certainly saw the physicality on the forecheck, but it didn't produce the puck as much as it can. I think it slowed down the breakout of the Predators, headed the other way at times, but I don't think it produced the puck and turned into puck possession for the Canucks as much as Rick Tocchet would like. So, because I think it's a little bit of the over exuberance of just concentrating so much on the physicality. I mean, the players were joking in the dressing room afterwards. They didn't think a puck existed in the first period. So they claimed guilt themselves that, they were just so physical and so in the moment that they kind of forgot to play that part of the game. I expect that probably gets a little bit better in this one.
One of the other things that Rick Tocchet was chatting about on after practice Monday was you can't be afraid to line juggle and move a guy off a line in game. And I got to say, Blake, because for years, you and I on this show watched how head coaches handled Stanley Cup playoff games, juxtapose that versus how, say, Major League Baseball managers manage playoff games, and wondered, why is it that managers and coaches in other sports, basketball as well, understand that you ain't got time to bleed, and hockey coaches are a little slower to make those sort of bigger, more dramatic in-game adjustments. Rick Tocchet on 3 occasions, twice with an offensive zone draw, once on the fly, got lotto line together with Pettersson playing with Miller and Besser. When Lafferty wasn't going and made the mistake, he elevated Mikheyev to that line, and I think that was the right call as well. I think I would feel really good about the coaching hands we're in, not just for the totality of the season and the likely Jack Adams trophy, but you've talked about it all the time this year. He looks old school, but there are a lot of things about the way Rick Tocchet goes about coaching this club that are new school. And I think you're going to see more of that tonight if the Canucks aren't going. I think he's going to be quick with a blender if need be. Look, Hughes had a pretty easy night in game one, all things considered. I think if you absolutely have to play Quinn Hughes 30 minutes tonight with 2 days off before game 3, you go down that route. And I'm confident in this coach and his staff in terms of making the necessary in-game adjustments. And it's not always at the intermission break. You know, football coaches will tell you if you're waiting until halftime to adjust, you've waited too long. Same thing goes in hockey. If you're waiting until the intermission to adjust, sometimes that's too late. So I think they're in good hands tactically with this head coach, especially based on the card that he's suddenly been given with DeSmith in goal.
One thing we haven't got to is Casey DeSmith's playoff record.
He has a playoff record.
One start in his career. And folks, here's the good news.
2 games, right?
One start, though, I believe, isn't it?
I think it's 2 games.
Is it?
And
Okay.
1 start. Yeah.
An epic last appearance in the playoffs, a double overtime 50 save or 48 save performance with a 941 save percentage against the New York Rangers. Played 89 minutes.
And my bad, it was only the one game.
So he's had a sense of occasion when he's been asked to, albeit just once so far. But it's not. This is not his first rodeo. He's played 2 rodeos.
Yeah.
This is his second rodeo.
Yeah. Well, there were 3 players: Roenick, Höglander, and Pius Suter, who had never played a Stanley Cup playoff game before Sunday. And there were 2 Vancouver Canucks, if I'm not mistaken, Dakota Joshua and Casey DeSmith, who had just dipped a toe in the Stanley Cup playoffs, playing just the 1 game before Sunday's game 1. So yes, we 1 game.
Special teams.
Now it'll be 2.
Special teams can really bail this team out too, right? I think the PK has looked pretty good. Power play needs to step up. The power play needs to give some cushion and some insurance for this team. That's another way to get through a goaltending crisis, is to just outscore the opposition, and that gets a hell of a lot easier if you guarantee yourself a power play goal per game. Now, in my experience in watching games around the league, and of course there was not a ton for the Canucks in game 1 as well, there's not a lot of power plays being given out. So Jeff Patterson note that the referees for tonight are the ones that called the Avs and Jets game 1, in which there was only 2 power plays apiece, I believe.
Just tell me it's not Kelly.
No,
Southern.
it is not.
Okay.
It is
All
not. But you wonder if the whistles are put away a little bit early on in this playoffs, as per usual. It's going to be tough. So, if the Canucks, let's say they only get 3 power plays, which is still low by most National Hockey League standards, you still got to score a goal. You need to help out your team here and get a power play goal tonight, and then be locked stock, on the penalty kill, and make sure that the Preds are held at bay. So special teams just got a lot bigger with Thatcher Demko out.
Mm-hmm. Vasily Podkolzin and Nils Oman stayed late to skate. Looks like PDG then.
Same old.
Yeah, it looks like he's not going to mess with the winning lineup. We had wondered about that as well. Do you play the young player who would also be playing his first Stanley Cup playoff game, whether it's Vasily Podkolzin or Nils Oman, when you have last change at home, knowing if it doesn't work out, you can just staple him. You can go back to the veteran for the road game, playoff game 3 Friday in Nashville. Looks like Rick Tocchet has decided not to mess with the winning lineup. And despite telling us that he was next going to be in Vancouver in November when his kid has a hockey tournament here, I see Ryan Kesler is back in town.
So he's either good at keeping a secret, or the Canucks were like, hey, Kesler seems to be making media appearances.
Yeah.
Maybe we should jump on that.
I think he'll crank the siren tonight. I think
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good
And
bet.
I also wonder whether this is the next step in getting Ryan Kesler to the Ring of Honor. We asked him the question on Thursday, Friday, whenever we had him on Friday. He said that would be meaningful to him. I know a lot of fans, when I tweeted about it, got back to me and said he wanted out and he tied their hands with just an Anaheim trade. Folks, remind you of Pavel Bure, who tied their hands even tighter and is now in the rafters with his number retired. The other thing, and the story is out there, go look at it. The Vancouver Canucks had a deal at the previous deadline for Ryan Kesler to Anaheim for a similar but some would argue better package. Ownership squashed the deal. They thought they could convince Kesler to stay. Didn't work out. Next thing you know, he's moved at that draft in Philadelphia. by Jim Benning in his first draft and big event, NHL event at the helm of the Vancouver Canucks. So, yes, it is true he requested a trade out of town. Yes, it is true that he handcuffed the Canucks in terms of the available destinations with the no trade clause. All of that is within his right as a player. And for my money, he's a better player than some of the guys who are currently honored.
And this was not planned, and by no means is this fortunate per se. But this is an easy timing for him to repatriate himself.
Very soft landing.
The good vibes coming off of game one and the distraction now of the Demko news. People are not going to be thinking, oh, I got to remember to hold my grudge against Ryan Kesler tonight.
Well, and the other thing is the fans adored him when he made the appearance at, was it Sedin retirement night? He got a huge ovation. So, yeah.
I think he's going to do just fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Folks, if I'm not holding a grudge against Ryan Kesler.
Exactly. And Kessler's not holding a grudge against him either.
Yes. Time heals wounds, folks. Time heals wounds.
You guys have gotten along so well. I think we've done 3 interviews with Kess since going independent 3 years ago.
Everybody's a big boy now, you know? Me and Mike Gillis are on a texting basis, for God's sakes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. News to me.
Like, come on.
Hey, big week at Greta. We're inviting you to come join us for watch parties, road games Friday and Sunday. Great food, great prizes. We'll do some intermission trivia and watch the games with like-minded and celebratory people. Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova will be there Friday. Remember, it's the afternoon, 4:30 start on Friday. That's a 2 p.m. start on Sunday. So come join us at Greta, and thank you to everybody who turned out yesterday, Monday, for Frank Seravalli's playoff watch party Q&A at Greta. He told me he had a blast. Time now for today's menu. And just a note on today's menu, full disclosure, when we talked to John Shannon today, when we talked to Rob Williams today, we were at that point unaware of the Thatcher Demko news. It had not yet been broken by Frank Seravalli. So the menu, a presentation of Ben Moss Jewelers. Ben Moss Jewelers, proudly Canadian owned, operated with a history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in British Columbia, including Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center, committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out the large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. These diamonds come with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. John Shannon is coming up. Rob Williams after that. Then we'll get to the golf report brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club. And John Shannon is coming up next.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Our next guest is the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast. It's our pleasure to welcome John Shannon back to the program. How you doing?
Oh, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
It's the 4th day of Christmas.
Absolutely. And we'll get into some of these series and some of these games and the ratings in a second. But first, we are a Canucks show. John, what did you make of game 1 for the Canucks?
Well, we knew Nashville was going to be tough. They were tough. They still will be tough. But I think if the Canucks continue to play their game, they'll win this going away. I really do. I see the depth of the Canucks come through at the right time. It's great to see Elias Lindholm play better. And the magic elixir, boys, seems to be, we'll play with Garland and Joshua, and you're going to be great.
That's true. The only thing that could change for the Predators, and for the most part, I agree with your assessment there. I don't know that the skaters can do much different for the Preds than what they did. I think Saros can be better. To me, that's the one thing that could save the Preds in a given game.
Yeah, you know what? It's been a long season for UC Saros.
Yeah, it has.
A long season. People get tired. And this is where, and this is not a criticism of him at all, because he's been amazing. This is where big goaltenders can take advantage of situations. And UC Saros is not a big goaltender. There is room to shoot on him. And you know darn well that Rick Tocchet and his staff have found that, and I think that that's a big factor in this game.
You're right. In the event
under
of
the blocker.
fatigue, just sheer
Right.
size
Sheer
is going to
size.
save you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the position makes you a physical barrier between the scoring instrument and the scoring zone. So size does.
By the way, that sounds like physics, Matt. I was never good at physics.
I mean, honestly, and you're talking to someone who's got grade 10 science and no more, John, but I do understand that, mass in front of a target, it's pretty simple at the end of the day. Hey, what did it mean to you as a British Columbian, John, pride of Oliver, to look upon the scenes in Vancouver here on Sunday for the first playoff game, first Stanley Cup playoff game in 9 years?
Quite honestly, chills. There is a time you're still a Canuck fan. There is a time you harken back to days of Bobby Schmatz and Tony Tanti and Richard Brodeur. Kirk McLean, although I was long gone by the time Kirk was the star of the show. I know how good a sports town Vancouver is. And I know how passionate sports fans are in the province. That was special. That truly was special.
John, you told us the story last week about handing out towels being part of the infancy, the birth of towel power here.
Yeah,
back in 1982. Was that your first big break? How much had you done before that?
Well, I was, I'm an old man now, but I think people will find it hard to believe I was a child prodigy. I produced the Stanley Cup final at the age of 22.
Really? Wow.
In 1980. And it was a great honor to do it with the voice Jim Robson calling Bob Nystrom's overtime goal at the Coliseum. Bob Nystrom has won the Stanley Cup, and so that was my first Stanley Cup final, was in 1980, and I basically went on a 35-year run at that point, Matty, one way or the other, of getting to the dance. But 82 was really something spectacular for me. And every Saturday in those days, every Saturday that I went to Vancouver was a little extra special. I used to do games all over the country, and lots of people would say they viewed games, doing games at the Forum and doing games at Maple Leaf Gardens were the paramount. But to me, going to the Coliseum and doing a 5:00 game on a Saturday night was magic to me.
Why do we still get chills every year in the opening week of the Stanley Cup final? We see it every year, and every year it takes our breath away. And I can appreciate it across the country. Not even being a fan of those teams, I'm in awe of the vibe that and even some markets in the States are providing that too. And guys like Pat McAfee taking notice of Winnipeg, and so it's every year. More people get awoken to the magic of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But even us, we know these Stanley Cup playoffs, John. Why does it take our breath away every single year?
By the way, I think we've seen it in all 8 cities so far. Yeah, I really do. I think we've seen it in all. I mean, last night when the Hurricanes scored those 2 goals in 9 seconds, you would have loved to have been in Raleigh. Mm-hmm. When Dallas scored, you would have loved to have been in Dallas. And I get emotional about this, Blake, but we love the game so much. We want people to love the game with us. And the moment you can put those two things together and have 18,000 people as one voice is just something that you cannot beat. As an aside, I saw the same thing at Madison Square Garden last night with the Knicks, and I saw the same thing last night in Denver with the Nuggets.
Right, yeah.
And it's the magic of the playoffs, and it's the emotion of the playoffs. And I think that, I'm biased. I think hockey does it really well. I'm not saying they do it better than anybody else, but hockey does it so well. And it's one of those times as a Canadian, you say, hey, we do it really, really good. And come enjoy the party with us. I think that's what it's all about. I truly do.
It's funny, John, because my better half went out with her friend to watch game 1 on Sunday, and she came home. She said, "I forgot how easy it is to make friends in the Stanley
That's
Cup
true.
playoffs,"
That's a good point
right?
too. Yeah.
No, you're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
It brings people together in ways that other walks of life don't bring people together. It's an expression of community pride in ways that other things aren't expressions of community pride. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, for Canadians, it's culture. Hockey is culture. It's identity.
So just as a quick story, 2010, of course, Sydney's golden goal at Rogers Arena for Canada. I was able to get one ticket for it for my daughter, and I was able to get one ticket for my son to go to Molson Hockey House down the street. And both of them talk about it as if they were both in the arena by the end of it, and both celebrating for that very reason, because of the culture and because the guy beside you and the girl beside you were celebrating with you and you were arm in arm. It was a cool event, and I think that anybody that was at Rogers Arena 2 nights ago would tell you that they will never forget being there.
Back to the Canucks. Did they dodge a bullet missing the Vegas Golden Knights? Did we see last night that they can flick a switch with their dismantling of the Dallas Stars?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure that there was a dismantling. What I did see there was I saw a team that knows how to win, and I think in Dallas, in many ways, because they were the best, one of the best teams in hockey, I think they felt the pressure of playing at home. To me, that's going to be a 7-game series, Blake. It's not as if because Vegas won the first game, it's going to end quickly. And I still wouldn't be surprised to see Dallas win the series. Jake Ottinger's got to be a bit better. I think some of the young guys, Stankhoven, Johnston, Robertson, I think they've got their feet a little wetter, and I think they'll be better. But I'll tell you what, when Mark Stone scored a minute 34 into the game, the amount of shaking you could feel around the National Hockey League and how to fix it in the CBA was
I honestly think that might have been the last straw, John, that he scored that goal
2 minutes in.
2 minutes into the game. Because even the Dallas fans are booing him.
Yes.
Right? That's not exactly the most hockey savvy market, but even though they know what's going on down there.
That's what the playoffs are all about.
Oh my goodness!
Gotta have a villain.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm waiting for Jimmy Nill, who was there at 82, to hold up a towel on a stick.
Exactly.
And the white flag.
Exactly, Jimmy. You go
That
at
would
it.
be good.
You walk into the next GM's meetings with the towel on the stick.
Good. I like that.
And you show it to McCrimmon and the Vegas. Is Edmonton going to cruise through the Kings based on what you saw in Game 1, John?
I think so. I mean, I have the Oilers winning in 5. It's so much has to do with Cam Talbot, if he can stay at any level that keeps him competitive. And if we see another game like last night, do we see David Riddick? And that, I don't think, with all due respect to all the David Riddick fans out there, Big Save Dave is not going to be the answer. You also saw something last night, and it's not a bad thing. Drew Doughty ripping into his teammates. Drew Doughty not very happy about what was going on the ice, particularly late in the game. And they're going to be a little more edgy. But at the same time, if Connor is doing what Connor did last night and Leon's doing that, and my goodness gracious, they're in pretty good shape in Edmonton.
That sharp angle Leon Draisaitl office, no one in the world has ever had that as their office on the goal line, and he scores there with regularity. It's just it's unbelievable. But they also didn't make life difficult on Stuart Skinner, which he's an untested, unproven playoff goaltender. They just couldn't get near him to get enough shots on goal.
Two things on that. First of all, as Skinner's rested. He wasn't rested last year. Mm-hmm. He was exhausted by the playoffs started last year. The one thing I would say about the Oilers did not play 60 minutes, and that will be the reminder in the next 48 hours by Chris Knobloch and Paul Coffey is, hey boys, you know what, we have an opportunity here but we can't let up. And that's exactly what they did. If the disallowed goal it stands and it's 4-2 and then it's 4-3 before the end of the period, I shudder to think what the difference would be. The Oilers let the Kings off the carpet a couple of times, and just had enough offensive power that they could beat them. But I just don't see anybody catching what Connor. By the way, I sent Friedman a note last night. I said you've got to reinvent the spinorama for Connor McDavid. I mean, how many times can he's now put that move into his into his CV, and if he can use that spinorama the way he did last night on a constant basis, then they are going to be even that much more powerful.
Yeah. Back on the Canucks, Sean, how worried about you? How worried are you about Elias Pettersson, and what do you think? Is he going to step up at any point in this series?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned. I think there's an expectation he has to reach. I think that this, when you talk about learning curves, there's a learning curve for somebody who is supposed to be the leader. He's still young. This is really good that they can get away with victories without him. But at a certain point, as this team progresses in the playoffs, there's going to be a greater expectation that Elias Pettersson is a better player than what he showed, not just in the last playoff game, but I would say the last 3 weeks of the season. And we talked about this last week. Yeah. At some point, Pettersson has to be Pettersson. And he can't take a back seat to JT Miller, and he can't take a back seat to Elias Lindholm. He has to be a driver at some point.
Does he have a gripe about his wingers, quality wingers versus the other two centers?
No. Hey, listen, leaders lead. Leaders lead. And that's what he has to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's the one goal in 14 games for Elias Pettersson.
Well, the frustration is it's after the contract, right? That's and he knew the moment. Vancouver's a tough market. The moment he signs that contract, every fan's expectations rose, and he's got to back it up now.
Mm-hmm. Still a bit of me that wonders whether that contract became part of the problem coming down the stretch here. Everything he told us all year, that wait until the end of the season, then everybody bullied him to the negotiation table. He signs the deal, and play hasn't been great since. So yeah, I do wonder about all that. Save for another day. What did you make of the JT Miller line against the Predators?
Listen, I think playoffs are built for JT Miller. And the more that he can be involved, the better he can be involved, the better for the Canucks it is. I had very little issue with the type of game most of the forwards played, other than, Pettersson. Mm-hmm. Although, I mean, even Pettersson, to me, they played a game to win. I mean, this is one where it's not where you sit and worry about artistic merit. This is one where, they won the game. They won it in a stunning style. You have to wonder about the emotional response that the Predators have after losing a game in 12 seconds. That's going to be a test too. So I didn't have any issue with in any way the forwards played at that point, really.
Yep. No, I hear you. Pettersson and Höglander weren't great, and DiGiuseppe on the fourth line took a bad penalty. Anyways, there's room for improvement, as Tocchet has talked about, but by the same token, you're quite right about style points. Artistic points don't matter here.
Although it's tough to steal games too. I mean, I still thought the Canucks. It's not like the Canucks stole that game. I thought they were at full value for the win ultimately. And you look again back to last night. The Islanders have that 3-0 lead, but they were being played under the table by the Hurricanes, who just couldn't get on the board with a goal. And then eventually, in the third, finally the Hurricanes break through. So it's also just hard to steal games when everybody's intensity is at the maximum. I mean, the Islanders had no business winning that game, and ultimately, on the judges' cards, the Canucks deserve to win their game too.
Sure, exactly. By the way, last night when you shot attempts, you see the shot attempts in Raleigh?
It's ridiculous.
110 to 28.
I've never seen a Corsi 4 disparity of 80 to 20 for a game. It was unbelievable. Like
you're not supposed to win games with 12 shots on goal.
No.
The Islanders had 12 shots on goal.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous. I heard somebody this morning opine that maybe Varlamov was hurt. Varlamov's not hurt. He's exhausted. He's exhausted. That's what happens. And that's what the playoffs are all about. That's survival, man.
It's good times. Good times had by all.
By the way, the towel ain't 82. Here's my latest idea for the Canucks. You ready?
Oh, sure.
Last week, Tocchet said in a couple of interviews, he said, embrace the pain. I can see a T-shirt with Tocchet's face and Canucks Stanley Cup playoffs and giant font that says embrace the pain. I think there's something there. You guys, the guys that did the hats, I think we could do the embrace the pain T-shirts. What do you think?
We're going to send that right away to our merchandising people, John. I think it's because
for round 2.
I mean,
yeah,
the face suggests it's been through some pain.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
embrace the pain, boys.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I sent that to the Canucks. They thought it was a brilliant idea too. So let's see who's got it first. Okay.
Oh, okay. It's a race. It's a race to the T-shirt. John, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this. Enjoy game 2. We'll catch up next week.
I will certainly enjoy game 2, as I will in Winnipeg as well.
British Columbia, you got chills on Sunday. Love it. Emotional.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. golfnorthlands.com.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? Do you have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Joined now by Rob Williams, Rob the hockey guy, the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and his Offside Sports vertical. So, how are we feeling about the vibes, Rob?
The vibes are immaculate. I absolutely loved Sunday was awesome. Personally, I was in the press box for the very first time, November 2015. I don't think anyone's been waiting longer among the media folks
to experience that. Yes.
To see it. And there was a lot of us waiting a while, like to actually, cover a playoff game, and boy, did it deliver. The fans were awesome the whole night. Like that place was jumping, first playoff game in Vancouver since 2015. And I think Sedin night might have been louder, maybe. Other than that, it hasn't been that loud. I mean, it wasn't that loud in 2015 or 2013 or 2012 even, right? Like, I think you have to go back to 2011 to find a night where Rogers Arena was bumping like that. It was such a cool experience. And it was funny. I was on my way to the rink, and I was kind of wondering, okay, like, I think I have a pulse on the city, but like, how amped are people right now in Vancouver? And then I drove by a guy on East Hastings Street near the P&E, and he was sitting on a lawn chair in the middle of Hastings Street on an island near an intersection with a giant Canucks flag, and he was just waving it. This is like, and I got to the game early. Like, this is like hours. This is like 2 hours before puck drop. and just getting people, just excited about the game. So like that gave me a sense of what it was going to be like. And then outside, in the party on the plaza was jam packed. So yeah, it was such a cool night at Rogers Arena.
So the vibes are great. More on the parties in a second, but did you hear him low key trying to lobby to be the most aggrieved Vancouver media member?
Oh yeah,
November 15 drop.
Why doesn't Daily Hive do a rankings? Most aggrieved media members.
Months after their last playoff appearance, and I haven't seen one since. So I am most aggrieved.
Jake Virtanen scored his first NHL goal that night. I remember it was a long, long time ago. Yes, it's been a while.
To be fair, I had a similar moment. My first playoff game covered was with Sports Page in 2001, and they had missed the playoffs for 4 straight years, and that felt like a decade. Like it really did. It felt like a decade at that point, coming off the Bury years and all that. And they were already down 2-0 in the series against the Avalanche, and I remember the goosebumps. It was crazy.
I was there that night as a fan, and I remember, and that's a pretty good parallel to what it was like on Sunday night, where it was just like this long period, without playoff hockey, and I think during that period of time, it was like, remember there were talks about like Vancouver could lose its franchise.
Yeah.
Remember Brian Burke was like this one phone call away.
Yes.
The city had just lost the Vancouver Grizzlies, so there was like, I think sports fans had been through a lot at that time, and that was like a cool moment. But the difference this time is I think people are actually think this team could do something.
That's right. There was no hope for that team. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
So the vibes are great. You mentioned the party on the plaza, but we should update because the last time we talked to you, we were wondering, are there going to be outdoor viewing parties or not? And really, outside of Delta, there is not. So what happened here as you understand it, Rob?
Yeah, I don't know whose end it was. Like, I don't know if this was the Canucks wanted it, but the city didn't want them to host it because they didn't want to, I don't know, didn't want any risk of any trouble from having extra fans in the area. I don't know. I don't know if it was the Canucks needed to buck up and they didn't buck up. I don't know. They are having an indoor watch party for Game 3. They haven't mentioned anything about Game 4, so perhaps there's no indoor watch party for Game 4. I don't know if they're setting up for a concert or not, or if they're just waiting. But it does seem quiet on that front.
Have they done this before? This seems like they've not done this before. Like, like what?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So there's going to be an indoor watch party. Sounds like they're making beer and hot dogs and popcorn a little bit cheaper than normal, thankfully. But it's I think it'll be fun for a lot of fans. I think that'll be cool, and I think that'll be a good place to watch the game. But you're not going to see the same scenes that we see in Toronto, that we see in Winnipeg, that we see in Edmonton. So to me, it's I think it's they maybe don't have the ready-made screen like they have in Toronto, like like they have in Edmonton, where they just have it on the side of their arena.
Mm-hmm.
That's already built in. But to me, this is a missed opportunity. I know it would cost money to set up. It would take a lot of organization. But the scenes, I think the marketing potential here for having a whole bunch of Canucks fans, mostly in their 20s, jumping up and down and partying, and having those visuals, which we would have seen on Sunday night for sure, and the weather was great. Bit of a missed opportunity, but it's not my money either. So
we have the technology, though. The fact they don't pull this off is unbelievable.
Yeah. So the difference being, this is a ticketed event for Game 3 on Friday, so it's a revenue stream, not community goodwill. And
it is. I mean, it will be a revenue stream for concessions for sure. We should be noted that the tickets to get in are going to Canuck Place.
Okay, so it's a charitable.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that the Toronto one, at least, and maybe the other ones too, are they are gated events. I don't know if they're ticketed events, but it's not just stroll up.
Mhm.
There is security and gates and all that
which
sort
is
of thing.
sort of the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost have to do it that way.
That's right.
From a safety and a security point of view. All right. Well, they have a pregame party on the Plaza for home games, and of course, the Plaza got a quite a shine there with climbing the Roger Nielsen statue to adorn it with a new white towel. What do you make of the scene that's going on out on the Plaza, Rob? Because the Canucks have also sent a note saying content gathering on the Plaza, need permission. As though that's enforceable when you have thousands of cell phones and cameras that'll be on that Plaza.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, the Canucks themselves used content from their own fans on Instagram in a couple of posts recently. So I won't dive into I won't bore your listeners with the minutia of content rights, but it was a cool scene. I do wonder what we're going to see around. Like, is there going to be a little fence around the Roger Nielsen statue and a security guard standing there? That wouldn't surprise me.
Honestly, you're right. I wouldn't
Like,
surprise me either.
I know they did something similar in Edmonton during the playoffs in recent years with the Gretzky statue, and so it wouldn't surprise me if there's something like that, because we can't really, we can't have people climbing the Roger Nielsen statue. I love that it happened like first game. We're already climbing statues. That's the level we're at here already.
Mm-hmm.
It was so awesome. Honestly, I made a point of, my route to the rink didn't involve me necessarily going through the Plaza, but I was like, I need to see what this looks like. And I turned the corner and I was like, this is awesome. Like, it was more than an hour before puck drop. There was a lineup, like the stairs going up into the arena were just jam packed, and there was a band playing, and there were people everywhere, and there was a vibe, there was a buzz before the game, and it was really cool to see.
Mm-hmm. The Nashville folk, they're making fun of Rogers Arena seats, are they?
They're coming after our beloved maroon seats, you guys.
It is our Achilles heel, and we know it.
Absolutely the Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about content, they got the photo from the photo I posted of the empty arena. So that they had the towels on all of the seats prior to a few hours before the game, and I guess you could get a good look at some of the seats, and they were. I don't know. I feel like I've never seen the seats look that extra old. Like, they looked a little wrinkly. They looked old.
Baggy.
Yes. Yeah. So there was one of the top trending topics on Predators Reddit was about the seats, comparing them to seats that you'd find in a Buick LeSabre, which I thought was pretty clever, but
not a bad shout, actually.
Listen,
when I saw that,
hey,
I was like, hey,
guys,
that's about right.
I had a 1983 Buick LeSabre, maroon seats. I swear to you, I did. And they put the Rogers Arena seats to shame. We are talking about plush, velveteen, very large back seat. End of comment.
Oh wow!
They put
single days.
They put the Rogers Arena seats to shame. So let's not drag LeSabres into this, okay?
Well, the way you're going on, do they have a Buick LeSabre at the Applewood Performance Center? Then maybe we can get you.
They would be
at
so
some
lucky.
point.
They would be so lucky.
And Rob, you should really send an angry lawyer's letter to Predators Reddit. See how they like that.
Yeah,
for stealing your content.
That's right.
Did you, by the way, get that shot of the seats approved by Canucks Media Relations?
It was a photo. We're allowed to take photos, so that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We're allowed to take photos.
Right.
But anyways, the thing I thought was funny, because trash talk, I don't know if it's fully begun in this series quite yet. I think we're going to see a little bit more when the series shifts to Nashville and Canucks Nation invades Bridgestone Arena. Which I don't think we talked about this last week, guys, that Nashville is actively trying to keep Canucks fans out of their building. They're geo-fencing, ticket sales, but of course you can go on StubHub and you can go some other places and find tickets. I'm sure you could show up to Nashville and get Ticketmaster resale seats the day before the game,
and they're
sort of
cheap.
thing.
The flights are cheap. The tickets are cheap. It's actually not a crazy idea.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that I think we're going to see a little bit more trash talk when the series shifts there. But for now, this attempted trash talk, the only part I was looking for like reaction from Canucks fans and what they were going to say, and the only semblance of anger was like, "Hey, nobody makes fun of Rogers Arena's seats but us."
Exactly.
Well, and here's the thing about the trash talk happening once we move to Music City. Canucks have never lost a playoff game in Nashville. 3-0, in large part thanks to Ryan Kesler, but they won all 3 games there.
That trash talk looks a lot better with a 2-0 series lead rather than the series being tied, though, right? So that's got to walk before you run.
Mm-hmm. Let's ask you the poll question, Rob. Elias Pettersson, is he stepping up in this series? What do you think?
I think he will. Game 1, he wasn't necessarily bad, but yeah, it's been a while since we've seen him, seen the Pettersson that we know he can be. And I know, it seemed like, Tocchet, I think, is trying to get him going. He played him a few shifts where we saw the Lotto line back together, to get Pettersson a few more touches, playing with, elite players. I think he's got to. I think it's just one of these things where it's like we've seen it before. It's there. He just has to unlock it. So I think he should get a good opportunity to perform at a high level in this series. Like, he's not getting the tough matchups, right? Like, he played mostly against Colton Sisson's line. Like, he's not getting the O'Reilly matchup. He's not getting the shutdown pair against him. So I do think I think it's there for no other good reason than it's there. Like, he has it. Yeah. So I think at some point we'll see it, but the question is, how long will it take?
Do you think how much do you think he's hampered by his wingers, and are you for keeping Mikheyev there instead of Lafferty?
Yeah, I didn't like the move to put Lafferty back to put Lafferty on that line. I thought Mikheyev, I've been kind of pleasantly happy, I think, with Mikheyev's play in the last few weeks. I know he's not, people make fun of him when he doesn't finish off a chance, but he's been getting a lot more chances of late. And that's not, his calling card is not that he's an elite finisher. It's, it's the other things. It's all the little things. And if he's getting a ton of scoring opportunities, I think that's a good thing. That's a good sign. And I think that he should probably be back. I think he's probably the best option on that wing, given that you're not going to split up the Miller line, you're not going to split up the Lindholm line. So that's what I would do for sure.
His skating and assertiveness is the best it's been in a long, long time, Mikheyev's. But my goodness, that man just cannot put a puck in the net. It's if only, like, if there was just a semblance of it.
So, you know what I think? You know what I think, though, guys. Like, when you get to the playoffs, I think that guys like him that have struggled, and we saw it with Elias Lindholm. I think when you struggle through the regular season and you maybe had a down year, you get to the playoffs. I think there's something psychologically where it's just everyone starts at 0, and I think a weight comes off just a little bit. And if you can get a goal early on in the playoffs, I think that can give you quite a boost.
That's fair.
In that vein, Grady, was it Farhan on the Rink-Wide Vancouver playoff preview show that called Pius Suter scoring for the Canucks in Game 1?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right. Mikheyev scores tonight.
Okay.
Mikheyev scores tonight.
Okay.
Looking at the prop too.
Will they be chanting his name?
No.
It's too cumbersome to chant.
It's a hard chant. It's a hard chant.
It is a very hard chant. Mm-hmm. Lastly, Rob, what else stood out to you in Game 1 as we took in the first playoff game here in 9 years and more than, as you noted, what was it? 3,000 plus days. What else stood out?
But who's counting? I think it was Lindholm. Lindholm, I thought was, the Lindholm that we thought we were getting, when the Canucks acquired him. I think that he had gone quiet, of course, before his injury, had struggled offensively. He gets the goal. It's a goal that Saros probably should have stopped, but that's also, Lindholm's got a really good shot, right? He's got the possibility to score from distance because of his good wrist shot. But it wasn't just that, and it wasn't just the last game. I think he's looked much better since returning from his injury, and we saw that he was deployed, in a bit of a shutdown role with Garland and Joshua. Joshua's getting the love for his game winner, but boy, oh boy, look at that. That goal was all three of them involved. Lindholm's in on the forecheck, delivers the hit, separates the player from the puck. Garland gets it, makes a great pass to Joshua through a defender's legs, and then Joshua with a great finish, pulling the puck in and putting it top corner. So that whole line, but Lindholm especially, if Lindholm can be a difference maker paired with those two, boy, that gives them a really good line for the playoffs.
Marvelous stuff, Rob. You enjoy game 2, and we'll catch up with you next week, buddy.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Time now for the Golf Report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Designed Whistler Golf Club. And Blake, today, talking about the future of golf, because not since Tiger with Annika, or maybe Tiger with Lorena Ochoa, have we had two unassailable number one players in the world on the men's and ladies side as we have right now. We talked about Scheffler yesterday, the 4 wins and 5 starts, adding the plaid jacket of the RBC Heritage.
And merely a second along the way in that 5th start, by the way.
The green jacket he won at Augusta. Then there's Nelly Korda, who wins for a record-tying 5th consecutive start, tying Annika Sorenstam and Nancy Lopez for the LPGA record. It's her second major championship at the Chevron Championship over the weekend. Brooke Henderson in a tie for 3rd there. The thing about Nelly going forward, is she going to embrace the publicity? Is she going to be there for all the media and sponsorship and promotional activities that the LPGA is going to absolutely want to center around her? She's been a little publicity shy. In the past, she has talked about that, she went through a period of big time doubts about her game, listening to the noise, hearing all the negativity in 2022, 2023. This is after she won her first major championship in 2021. And not to mention, she had a blood clot issue in her arm.
It looked like she was going to be the next one a few years ago, and it just didn't come to pass as quickly as we thought it was going to pass.
But now it's happening.
And
if the name sounds familiar, her father, Peter Korda, was a longtime ATP tennis pro and moved the family to Florida. So her and her sister grew up, who also plays on the LPGA Tour. As Americans, they played for the USA in the Solheim Cup. She's an absolute superstar here. Like, the game is,
and brother's a good tennis player too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So athletic family.
Yeah.
And number one by a mile now on the ladies' side of things after 5 straight wins, much like Scheffler on the men's side of things. But we're not going to stop on the future of golf there, Blake. Have you heard about 15-year-old Miles Russell? He's a lefty.
Is this the guy on the Corn Ferry Tour?
That's right.
Yeah.
He's a lefty. At 15 years old, he shot 66 Friday on the Corn Ferry Tour, becoming the youngest ever to make the cut on that tour. He finished tied for 25th. 15-year-old, skinny 15-year-old. Blake, the driver, carries 280.
Just that, huh?
Just 280. And he is absolutely going to be one to watch. And I also want to shout a Canadian up-and-comer, Matthew Anderson, who won the Brazil Open on the Rio Olympic course. He's the first Canadian to win on PGA Tour Americas. And Scott Pritchard, the controversial, bombastic golf coach, golf observer down in Texas. We had Scotty on the show once upon a time after Bryson DeChambeau won his first major. He's done some work with Will Zalatoris. He tweeted and said, Matty is as mentally tough as they come. Also one of the longest drivers of the golf ball I have ever witnessed. So we'll see if another Canadian can work his way up and join the PGA Tour, and Matthew Anderson, who's a winner on the PGA Tour Americas, which is a good feeder system.
I worry about the upstarts, the phenoms, because Tiger's really the only phenom that has really hit it out of the park.
Well,
and
Phil too. Phil was a phenom as well. But
he
you're
didn't
right.
get quite like Michelle Wee had a great career, but she still wasn't what we thought she was maybe going to be. Ty Tryon on the PGA Tour, same sort of thing. Like, it's so hard out there.
What's the kid's name with the funky swing? He's on Live now. It's Wolf.
Matthew Wolf. Yeah.
Although, Hovland and Morikawa came up with him, and they look like they're going to deliver.
Again,
Morikawa's already got 2
Morikawa,
majors.
great player, but not the most dominant player just yet. Anyway,
No,
we'll see.
Well, 2 majors. I think he got to number 1 briefly, but yes,
yeah,
probably more ahead for him and for Hovland. I would think as well. And herein lies the live problem. Unless you want to go out and buy Miles Russell, right? You're not really going to be developing stars of your own.
You're not getting the first lick at him anyway.
Unless you're willing to commit a whole lot of money when they're awfully young on the potential.
And are they going to play enough golf on the abbreviated Live Tour to actually develop? And they're going to look at you and go, that's not enough golf for me.
So much to sort here in men's professional golf. That's the Golf Report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Counting down opening day on May 10th, club reminds organizers of groups of 12 or more it is time to lock in those tee times for the 2024 season. The primetime weekend slots are filling on up. And just for reaching out to hold that tee time, you, the organizer, group of 12 or more, you play for free. Tell Whistler Golf Club about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups. Of course, follow their spring preparation. The Bears are back at Whistler Golf.